Bom, gente, bem-vindos, né, e bem-vindas a
Welcome to FEBRABAN TECH 2025.
2025.
We know that 2025 is the year of agentic AI, so we're talking about autonomous agents.
Agentes diários
We know that many AI agents will start integrating the work power of companies,
ações autônomas.
doing autonomous actions, oftentimes with no human intervention.
Sabe também que esses agentes
We also know that these intelligent agents
entendem objetivos,
understand the objectives, they plan actions and execute tasks independently,
vão remodelar fundamentalmente
and they will shape the way that we work.
o tradicional organograma.
Traditional organogram based on functions
Dar uma nova matriz de trabalho.
will give place to a new work matrix in which teams are made around objectives that can be potentialized by AI.
Vão precisar preparar
Companies will need to train their teams to cooperate with agents rather than treating AI just one more tool.
porque dado o
Not to mention that given the potential of these agents to potentialize complex tasks, they tend to replace tasks
emprego.
and then whole jobs.
Quais setores e tarefas
So what sectors and tasks will be more susceptible of the autonomy of the AI agents?
vai debater aqui hoje?
This is what we're going to discuss here, and I would like to call Diogo Cortes on stage, a professor at the University of São Paulo.
Palmas, pessoal.
A round of applause, please.
Francesco de Marcelo,
Francesco de Marcelo,
tecnologia do Bradesco.
Executive Director at Bradesco Bank.
Marcelo Braga,
Marcelo Braga, President of IBM Brazil.
e Rafael Rovan,
And Rafael Ravani, Head of Artificial Intelligence Data at Banco do Brasil.
cada veio com a sua torcida.
Well,
Você viu?
you all brought your own fan base, right?
Mas vamos lá, gente.
Okay, so let's see. Thank you for coming today. In order to debate this topic that we've been talking, that it's been making many people like lose their sleep, I would like to bring a concept what these AI agents are,
Porque, na opinião de cada
and to understand why, in your opinion, it's generating such a commotion.
vou começar com o Diogo.
I would like to start with Diogo.
Explicando pra gente
I would like you told us what are these AI agents
características e os principais desafios, né?
and what are the main challenges and benefits for companies.
Para tudo ou não servem, Diogo?
So, are we fit for everything or not?
Difícil porque na verdade não tem
Well, I'm not sure if it's a hard question because there's not only one single answer, and everybody will learn about that. And we have many definitions to whatever AI.
Bom, mas quando a gente está falando de IA, a gente
When we talk about agentic AI, we can try and answer that in two dimensions.
a agêntica parece que ela é
We say that agentic AI is like a monolith. It's like the oracle that's going to solve everything. But we can see that if we think about the system point of view. But we can also open this box and to understand deeper whatever is there. And we see that there are many AIs, many models, many agents that can interact.
basicamente, né? Qual que
But basically, what's the main difference of agentic AI to Gen AI?
e a IA generativa a gente pode usar
Gen AI, we can use chatbox or ChatGPT or our main actor to make things easier.
seria aquela IA que é
It
mais
would be that AI that it's like self-contained. It's going to answer to our prompts.
simples.
A simple example, if you open a chat box of like Gen AI, you can ask, okay, please create like
de viagens para Roma,
a route of a trip for 5-day trip in London, in Rome.
né? Então
It's going to give you the answer. It's going to be self-contained there.
a parte
It's going to generate the text, and that's where it will stop.
chatbots eles
But now the chat box, they are changing their behavior nowadays. They say, okay, would you like to stop? I can do this. But now they encourage us to keep talking. And they ask you, do you want me to do anything else? So if you ask for a test, they will ask you, so wouldn't you like me to prepare a version for LinkedIn?
a nos promptear
So they are prompting us as well.
tradicional.
But that's traditional chatbot AI.
A agêntica,
But with agentic AI,
fundamental aqui é
the crucial word is autonomy.
mais autonomia
So it's to provide more autonomy to the agents to make their decisions. So the difference of agentic AI is that it has the possibility of observing the environment, so that's
fundamental, né?
a crucial function. It observes the environment somehow through APIs or sensors, if it's like a real world or robotic, and it can take actions.
De maneira autônoma, sem
And
necessariamente
oftentimes an autonomous action without human intervention.
uma autonomia maior, traz
That's good because it brings autonomy, improves efficiency. But if we're talking about a technological device that it's making decision in our place without necessarily our direct intervention,
desafio muito grande
that brings a huge challenge regarding governance,
de privacidade.
security, and privacy. So this is something that we have to deal with. And just to supplement,
Se a gente abrir essa caixa,
if we open this box,
isso que a gente está chamando de
you will see that what we're calling Gen AI, that not only replies to a prompt, it can look for example, your trip route, can try to find the cheapest hotel,
a gente pode abrir essa caixa e ver que na
to make reservations, and then we can see, we open this box and we see that there are many agents using these LLMs.
podem ser o mesmo ou
It
podem
can be the same or different ones.
difícil definir.
So that's why it's hard to define, because it's a combination of possibilities that will depend on the architecture of the systems, but brings huge challenges regarding governance. And I think that's the main challenge that we have ahead of us.
Para conceitualizar,
So just for a concept, that's it. Well, thank you, Diogo. I think the key word for me is action with these agents. To think that action, when I think about an action, it's the most different word in Gen AI. Okay, Braga, for you, why do you think that agentic AI is ready to revolutionize business? And do you think that can be a game changer for many sectors? Hello, everyone. Such a pleasure to be with you. Another FEBRABAN Tech. Regarding AI, AI has been dominating the conversation in the last years, but now it's the main role with agentic AI. So why do I think that can happen? As Diogo mentioned, when you create these many cells working autonomously, businesses see a different context. If you can create an agent in a few minutes and interact with the systems with natural language to access anything, for business, you need a maestro for that. You can orchestrate. The processes of companies can be revisited. Let's say, like, let me get an example of like the trip, the planning a trip. So for companies, they have like rules and regulations. You can say in these hotels, you need to take like the cheaper flight. There are many rules. So the first point is, when you get an agent that is a specialist on plane tickets, and another one is specializing in hotel, another one's going to see your logistics. So is it better to hire a car, to call an Uber? So how you access all these agents to round them up, because you need to buy the ticket, then you choose the hotel, and then you think about the logistics. You see, there is a sequence. If you trigger everything at the same time, you have the ticket, the flight on the wrong day, and the wrong hotel. So this orchestration, this possibility of like, I made this decision based on this rule or instruction, and you have the evidence here, because companies, when you make a decision, it can be questioned. So I got a credit. Why did I get this credit? Or I gave a discount because. So this vision with governance, with orchestration of agents. But remember that we are going through a moment that it's not an increment of productivity. We're not talking about like 10% faster. We're not talking about like 10% less. We're talking about multipliers. It's to be able to do something 10 times faster. And we are not used to think about exponentially. It's like a little bit more budget, a little bit more productivity, a little bit more profit. But when you enter in the exponential world, it's to rethink about things. Maybe you can do things differently. But what never changes for companies and businesses is this discussion of like having guardrails, to have orchestration, because otherwise each one can have their own orchestra and some agents may misbehave. And let me put some spice here. It's like data security. So an agent can talk to an HR system, another agent can talk to sales, but nobody told them that they shouldn't talk to each other. And then you have the prompt injections and all that. So, and let's confess that human creativity and robots are still far from extracting information the way we do. But if we look about access of data, whoever accessed the HR had access, and the sales the sales also had access, but accessing one through the other. Now we see this level of sophistication. If you have 10 agents, that's okay. 15, okay. 50, 100, 1,000, things are getting pretty sophisticated.
I can imagine. Well, as we have this very bank-focused audience, let's talk about banks now. And Francesco, I would like to talk to you and Rafael now.
Onde vocês acham que os agentes
Where do you think that these agents will be welcome and where will they be uninvited guests? So, what would you like to say on that? Well, before talking about this, I'm sorry for my Portuguese because I am still trying to practice my Portuguese and I forget that we have this simultaneous translation.
Per completare a fala do Braga aqui,
So, building on what he said,
o che além de LLM, modello di linguaggio,
besides LLM
di una piattaforma
and
gestão e governanza
governance and management and control a platform, well,
fino a dia un agente
at the end of the day, an agent is a technological service
a fronte di un obiettivo claro
that is
posto e le planeja e se
that can build and coordinate and run and learn and improve the results based on the challenges posed. This missing gap, so that to build this framework at Bradesco, we are specialists at this.
una visão
We need to have this very clear vision about where we will apply or proliferate this population of agents. We have about 2,500 there. And they have been distributed in all these operations across our operational segments by means of this clear pipeline of impact and norms and also rules that will direct this proliferation of agents.
proliferando os agentes
Because once we proliferate our agents in automated services of these federated objects, this will generate a number of agents
prolifera
that will proliferate these exponential objects, about 10,000 agents. Because the thing is,
tornerà o di
we needed to coordinate this whole impact with this low investment so that we can iterate this easily, so that we can also have this great impact on the pipeline of business. And I will go back to the question. And in reply, we are building cases of agents,
molto rilevante.
and this is a very important happening. In all operational models, we're building on these three fundamental classes. Our BIA client, BIA is Bradesco's artificial intelligence, our AI platform. So BIA corporate, internal processes, and BIA tech, development, supported to all chains and developers.
La nostra limitação não é
Well, our limitation has nothing to do with these where the service will be applied, but with how this will be used. Because the limitation is this intrinsic weakness that we have.
fragilidade.
And I will explain what this weakness means. So you have this well-defined and clear task. We will actually, if this is not well coordinated, for example, with all these developers and data science, with all these agents, once they are orchestrated and organized by a human and 20 agents, they will work well together. But we have these very clear rules. We are optimizing the sales campaign, for example.
La tarefa
When the task
molto mai open-ended,
is more open-ended
molto mais volatile.
and more volatile, for example, it's volatile-based tasks, and they need,
Common sense.
let's say that they need these feelings and common sense, so to speak. Well,
Ainda un rischio molto
there is this great risk of hallucinations or non-resolution of objective-driven tasks or object-oriented tasks. Well, we see that this is not mature enough. Can you please give us an example? Well, let me try to define our strategy.
Sabe, você pode aumentar
We can increase
capacidade
the capacity
in una região versus
to sell in a region versus another one.
você pode
Variables can be multiple.
nessa situação
In this situation,
preferência é
our preference is that we have this slogan,
augmented by
human augmented by agency.
utiliza
That is, we use this as an insight provider or your agent, but you do not generate this AI, will not generate that. This generation will still be a human-based task because the complexity and impact of this generation can thus be very impactful
experiência
and provide a better experience and knowledge on this market based on human intelligence, I mean, which can also may increase but not be replaced by AI.
E
também na sua
você?
visão.
Banco do Brasil, Rafa.
Banco do Brasil.
Primeiro, obrigado pela oportunidade de estar aqui.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity of being here. I am sitting close to Braga here, and I would like to voice his opinion as well, because agents, they need to be welcome in all areas of our bank. We should not choose a single area because we will not even choose it. It's here. We do not choose something that it has already been granted us. We just adopt it. But in order to adopt it, we still need this type of governance and platforms that may make that are ready for AI use. If you do not have it, you will not make it friendly to all areas. And we have this moment of adoption, of course. At the bank, we look at processes, for example. I can have these AI agents to make decisions for credit operations and answering to this input given by a client that wants to perform a certain transaction.
Eu posso colocar ele na minha tomada de
This can be involved in my credit-related decision.
fazendo uma interação
This can also interact with my employees so that it can be part of the team
situações dos clientes
and bring some situations from our clients, I mean, so that this can provide a more favorable environment for decision making. Differently from bots, or unlike this type of bots that we use, we have already this overview on our clients and with this whole data captured by AI, so that we want to say that this client is more adequate than the other profile, for example. And we have been adopting this in order to improve our employees' performance and our communication with clients, especially in our credit-related operations and processes. Our back office is still very costly. All banks also try to aim at reaching such efficiency, and we have, in order to cover these processes, we try to feedback this so that we can have more resources to invest to go beyond our frontiers. And AI, all the agents, they must be welcome and open our doors to them so that they can be this transformative force in the way that we deal with our businesses, so that we can also be ready for that. And I will think that we will touch on that. We need to prepare our teams for using these AI agents, because much more than speaking about where, we need to speak about the how, and this will greatly rely on the culture of this company, on the understanding of these managers, that there will not be the articulators, but there will be a curatorship of robots, of bots. And this is a type of environment that remains untouched. And this is a game changer when it comes to making this platform more powerful. I attended a lecture of the Salesforce CEO, and he was at an event promoted by the Economic Forum. And he said that we are the last generation of leaders in the history of mankind that will lead only humans. From now on, all of us will lead at some point humans and machines, hybrid teams, and this has to do with what you said, and we will touch on that a bit further, okay? Okay, but moving along, we know that AI agents, as you yourself said, know that they can increase our efficiency, reduce our costs, and lead our IT teams in strategic tasks. As we were talking about the lack of IT teams, now we are actually boosting them. But we all know that the implementation of this technology also poses a challenge. It's not as simple as it looks. So what are these challenges, in your opinion, when it comes to all these challenges that are involved? And what do you think the organizations must do to establish the pillars for adoption, understanding that this is a novelty? And I would like to hear you first, Braga. Okay, so let's get started. Well, Michelle, the technological environment in the companies has been more and more sophisticated. There are multiple languages, systems, and generations, and all at the same time. Most of the banks have their own systems, long-standing systems, and they have new interactions and products and regulations now. So there is a big demand at the same time, right? Experts at AI, for example, they are these experts at novelties because these are recent things. The complexity of multiple clouds and systems will also require multiple skills, which is also very common. So we see that this is very relevant in this technological environment, which is the AI ops. And more, we are automating our tasks so that we can mitigate mistakes and prevent failures or things that could cause this downtime, and also automated decisions. These can go from operations. We can automate tasks. We can also automate a fire system so that we can expand the system. But once we move to the cloud, this is a over-dimensioned environment, means more costs. So we might have this more automated vision when it comes to cloud consumption. So there are some VNs that we can reduce, and those that are lacking, we can expand. So this brings the FinOps, which is the financial look at infrastructure and cloud services. Most of the clouds have this hybrid environment, so they are in-house or cloud-based contents. And we also see that once we automate it more, or once we bring in more agents that can help our operators either to operate or to answer questions, well, in the past, on the internet, we will think about Googling just to check some answers on Google, on forums, or ask our friends how they do it. And now we have this personal assistant. And this is a recent case, okay? Our team that is working with mainframes, for example, most of them have these legacy systems that have no implementation. So how can you use AI to document this so that you can identify these interdependencies so as to modernize this coding? And at the same time that you have this experienced assistant that also can collect this list of calls that you received in the last 15 years so that you can ask this question, interact with this agent, because this is no generic answer. They really know this, they are knowledgeable about your environment. So you can talk about your platform, your environment, your system. So this will be a very precise answer that will be given. We all know that this 1 minute downtime in some of the banks that are present here, we know that it generates this great insatisfaction. So we see that automation or assistant and the way of working these hybrid environments, whether in technology or in people, this can be a more empowered manner of working.
Nice.
Rafael, falando pouco dos desafios, você já
Rafael, speaking of the challenges, you've been working with agents at the bank. So what are the main challenges today? Well, they still are,
E sempre serão.
and they
excelente.
always will be.
Sempre serão os desafios, né? Eles
Like they are challenges and will remain challenges. They just change. When you think that you've known it all about Gen I, there are new agents.
Então, acho que isso é constante.
So that's a constant. But there are three main pillars.
Nível de profundidade
Like let me talk about like technical depth. So IT architecture, well organized so that you can understand the consumption dynamics, to understand how the AI agents and IT agents will help me to develop better,
se comportar, o que elas
so that how the teams will behave, how they will consume, how I can connect these to my seniors, because I still have seniors that know about my environment
no primeiro momento não vão conseguir
and that other agents will not be able to have this history.
TI robusta, nuvem,
So it's a robust IT technology like cloud, hybrid, mainframing.
é fundamental.
So we work with that. And it's important also to know how to deal
Funcionar
with these new employees, quote unquote, that we have in the IT team. So robust architecture is important. The second point is
sistema de dados governado.
a,
Bem governado.
a well-managed
Sejam os agentes de
data set, being with the agents that we have,
consiga fazer a orquestração
is we can do this orchestration and see the move of their connection one with the other, because they will connect,
como o Braga disse.
just like Braga mentioned.
Só colocando numa área e não conversa com
If I'm just feeding one area but I don't talk to the other, well, these agents will connect somehow. As a credit agents, they will try to find better operations. They will try to find to start being cross-section
múltipla
in a multiple and in real time.
de governança, de ecossistema.
So the architecture for ecosystems, for governance, and to data that can ensure the guardrails so that we have a proper technology that I can map, it's important. And the third pillar is culture.
Se não estiver preparada para
If my IT team is not ready to have a robot as a colleague, if the banks were more than 100 collaborators are not ready to understand this technology, and we're not talking about a co-pilot anymore.
alguém que executa
We're talking about somebody who makes this task autonomously.
da nossa capacidade,
That goes along with our philosophical capacity
aquela execução,
to
nos colocar de novo
transcend that execution and place us in such a position that we see everything with a bird's eye view, and we do not execute, and we understand that our role will be crucial where the algorithm and robots do not reach.
isso o algoritmo não traduz.
Well, the algorithm cannot translate that. That's human.
Trazer isso
So if we can bring that with these three main pillars, so culture, technological architecture, and good governance of data.
Lá no Bradesco,
And what about Bradesco, Francesco?
foram os desafios? Você falou que vocês estão com 2.000.
What about the challenges? You said there are 1,500 challenges.
Nossa abordagem é
Well, our approach was, even before my arrival, is I first.
o framework foi implementado.
The framework that has been implemented and the agent has been assembled, and this proliferation happening was very fast. So now we are going through a moment that academically is interesting, and to understand what's the best model to ensure speed and control
Modalità di execução.
in a modality for execution that it's quite accelerated in a certain way.
Desafio é entender
So our challenge is to understand, okay, so what's the best way to,
manter,
is it to proliferate, to continue, to govern, to prioritize,
centralizar completamente per toda
or to decentralize all the areas?
la definição de uma
The definition of a pipeline,
modelo di dados.
definition of a data model, or the opposite, to centralize,
Gerare entropia.
to avoid entropy and to decrease the impact in the business, or that it's my favorite,
Sono miei colegas ali.
so I have my friends there,
Che è metade do cammino. Che
that it's halfway through, that it's a strong core that will define control and data policies, architecture,
o utilizzatore
and users should consume and they would generate and orchestrate, certainly to have a federated object that I would say it's a slightly slower way to generate value.
na nossa visão hoje.
And in our vision, we said, okay, we can go further. So this is what we're trying to solve. And it's actually a very interesting moment from the academic point of view, because this is what we are going to have again in this environment. So,
Então, já puxando para o Diogo,
okay, so now calling Diogo, that we're talking about the academia,
você acha que são as considerações
what are the ethical considerations that we might have with the adoption of agentic AI?
O primeiro passo, a gente já
Well, the first step is to understand that AI is a different technology from what we've seen so far, especially because it's autonomous. But mostly, I've been working with this perspective of AI creating new paradigms to humankind. So what are paradigms?
crenças, regras,
Are a set of beliefs and orders that have been established. There is this book that I like very much called
científicas.
From Scientific Revolutions, from a philosopher called Thomas Kuhn.
O livro que é a evolução,
And he says that evolution of human knowledge is not linear.
mas não é.
We may have the feeling that it's linear, but it's not.
Uma nova
It's
descoberta
when we have a new discovery that disrupts everything
para outros lugares.
and replaces with a new one. Just like we believe that the Earth was the center of the universe,
Já acho
or that we thought that the limits was classical physics, but now we know it's quantum physics.
realidade.
So we challenge our reality. And when we talk about AI,
Mudar muitos paradigmas em
it's beginning to shift paradigms in different dimensions: economic, cultural, affective, cognitive, and that brings ethical challenges.
interessante porque você falou da
So this is important that you mentioned the sales force. He said, yes, our generation is the last one in the organogram that will only have humans.
mas talvez
Yes, but maybe his vision is wrong because he's projecting a future based in the past.
não estou falando que os agentes não vão
Well, I'm not saying that agents will not be here, okay, but these agents will be so impregnated in the operation that we're changing the processes of the organizations.
acho que é um momento que dá muita euforia.
And now we feel very euphoric, but also desperate,
Para onde estamos indo?
because where are we going? And nobody knows.
A gente está construindo esse
We're still building along the way. But the fact is,
começa
AI starts to break old paradigms, and we must get ready for that.
paradigmas
And many of those paradigms are ethical.
que a gente está falando de, por exemplo, agentes que
So we're talking about agents that make decisions. So within a specific context of an organization,
como banco,
just like a bank and all that,
mas quando
there are many challenges. But when we think about agents making decisions, for example, in immigration system, in justice, you will find other challenges that we've been discussing and doing research. And again, what's the limit of that use of technology?
isso a gente estava discutindo, né? Eu participei de
I've participated in many events in the Senate because of this project of a bill regarding AI, and now starting the debate in the lower house. We bring that. How can we define these limitations?
discutindo muito isso e
And we were discussing by looking, we started that before Gen AI. We had Gen AI,
mais uma camada de
then we had another layer of complexity because now we have an AI that creates things. Before it was predictive, would predict values. Now we're talking about a creating AI, and now we're talking about AIs that make actions in our place.
fato
So this is actually a brave new world that we have to think and rethink about all these paradigms. There are so many dimensions
vai ter que se preparar
that we'll need to get ready for an adequate place, but it takes time because
de prever.
we are very bad for predict technology.
Eu gosto muito de
But I really like,
imagem que eu uso,
there's this image.
print de
that it's a print of a magazine from 1998, and it's an interview with Paul Krugman. He's a Nobel Prize in economy, and he was studying the impact of technology. And in 1998, he said, in 2005, the impact of internet will get clear, will not be bigger than the fax machines. So the Nobel Prize of Economy. So I'm bringing this example because is he right or wrong? So maybe we understand this technology in the wrong way. Because what do we have regarding productivity? The internet, we don't have that much, but what matters is that what enabled regarding innovation and changes of paradigm. So what we have is like a technology that it's in a specific box. The GPT, general closed technology, that it's way more disruptive because it creates innovations based on that. And I believe that with AI is the same. I see AI with a tool for general purpose and things that we cannot generate. Just like Paul Krugman in 1998 did not anticipate that he would press a button in his house and he would order food or a car to pick him up to the New York Times. So I see this on the same level. Okay, another GPT coming in. Not only AI, but we have other potential ones.
Mas vamos lá. Você falou de
But okay, you mentioned like revisiting paradigms. We will need that. And Rafa mentioned people as well. The role of humans, and we're talking about human and robots, but we also have the culture, how we can enable and train our professionals. It's going to be so different that oftentimes we can't predict. And for that, when we think about capitalizing over these opportunities and at the same time mitigate risks, we need to revisit the workflows. We need to rethink how we are going to enable and train our employees and how we can structure decision making. So how can we access promptness of the workforce for agentic AI? And in your opinion, what are the main skills that employees will need to have in such a new world? And I would like to start with you, Rafa. Okay, nice. And it's nice to see that I was thinking about my journey 2 years ahead of the analytical. I'm going to turn 2 years in this position in the bank. And how good it is to look back and to see that we invested in the right path. So we don't know what's going to happen. So it's not feasible to think about the potential that we can have to change our lives and to change our nations and work. But one thing is certain. I must control. I must minimally try to control, and we chose for an option that is distributed, that give us the control of access. So, and we can use everything we have because that's what we need to do. And that's analyze it as we speak, and we are reanalyzing the structure, but we invested, and we invested in governance. And why am I talking about these processes? Because now I am comfortable to move on with capacitation of use, because I'm going to have environments that I can follow the adoption and use correctly without harming the principles and policies and directives. So we were pioneers to have this policy to use data and directives that are part of the ethical prepare of that employee. So we are discussing with the state-owned companies. We're talking about this, all the policies that are coming. So we invested on that. And along with this investment, and if we establish a policy that would allow that adoption, we also brought this capacitation called academia. It's something that it had that purpose to bring the whole institution to talk about that, like dealing with data using AI, Because when you have a traditional bank that is bicentenary with a very strong base on the physical, and we talked about that journey.
Você precisa
So you need to poke their minds,
a liderança tem
and leadership has to buy the idea, but the base needs to understand. And we managed to have 25,000 subscriptions, 25,000 people came along the journey. We have 65,000 employees. They do at least one track that uses these tools. We have more than 7,000 people that are on our base to analyze, to do data analysis, and they are in the technical team and 4 others that we're training. And we're very comfortable to see that we can change that, in
universidades corporativas do mundo. Então, fazendo esse balanço.
So by doing that, without people, we're not going anywhere. There is no point in having technology. But people using technology in the wrong way, we are bringing risk to the technology.
A capacitação, a cultura.
So training, culture, investment on that with the very well-established governance base, with policies and ethics that can support that, then we're going to fly high. And I see that everything that is going on, that it's still coming. And I'm very glad to say that we invested in the correct base so that we can see the change in that. And then,
Francesco, what skills you think that professionals need in this near future?
Vocês estão olhando isso lá no Bradesco?
How do you view that at Bradesco?
Io acho che sono due pontos precisos.
Well, there are 2 points that we need to keep in mind.
Você monta a força di trabalho,
We needed to build this future workforce,
una forza di trabalho,
which will be one
acho che o Braga começou,
that Braga even mentioned about that,
una forza di trabalho che
that will be a more leading workforce because they will lead hybrid teams,
humanos,
humans, non-humans,
è specialista di
and they will have to be specialized in specific topics, for example, development. This is a paradigm shift,
secondo
and this is the second point I'd like to mention. And we are also working on these object-oriented results. Well, the result is good because we have this hyper-democratization of tools,
disrupção.
and means disruption. And disruption needs to embrace this reality. And as Marcelo Noronha mentioned at the opening today,
O ChatGPT,
we had ChatGPT and Copilot. They are now available to all employees.
disrupção,
So there was this disruption, and disruption starts to be perceived not as a disruption itself, but as this new normal.
un aiuto costante.
So we have this constant help coming from one of our colleagues who works in electronics, and he does the same work in some areas, of course.
Convencidos che
We are convinced that this can add some value to our journey. Simultaneously, we can
una triglia, una
build this journey
di
or this track of training
che
for capacity building. And for us, this is the basics, like
o skills che si
we need to have this set of skills. They are becoming more and more critical because once the workforce changes,
è molto mais importante
these leaders needed to be well equipped when it comes to skills in order to address and drive work and the definition and task definition, which will be performed by our agents.
fazer algoritmos di
It's more important than writing these high performance algorithms because this will be done by agents. That's a type of shift that we are looking for.
Muito bom, gente.
Wonderful.
Puxar o Braga.
Now, Braga, please, I would like to ask you something. As we're talking about the skills that we need to be changed,
Isso impacta a liderança.
and of course, this impacts all leaders. When we look at leaders, do you think that current leaders are ready to make the most of these AI agents and their potential, or do you think that their disposition is still inferior to the need for changes? And at IBM, you must observe this in your clients. What do you think? This is an excellent point because
Complementar pouquinho a sua pergunta anterior.
building on what you said,
Eu acho que tem duas coisas que são fundamentais
there are two fundamental aspects to be considered. First,
que a
curiosity.
gente está vivendo hoje.
In this world, curiosity is key.
Não vai haver tempo
There will be no time
para criar uma
for a company to build a track and demand its employees to take a course, because everything that is an obligation will not be learned. You will this is just a task to be fulfilled. It's just a check mark more on this list. It's different from saying like, oh, I want to peer into that. I want to learn that. When you want to learn something, this differs from the obligation of taking a course. And that's exactly where we are at.
tiverem curiosidade para aprender,
If people are curious enough to learn,
hoje são curtas.
distances are very short.
Anos de experiência.
They are those who have 20 years of experience in Gen AI. Well, but if you live it for 2 years ahead, well, time will be also exponential.
Passado,
Now these years are being multiplied by 10.
sobre tecnologia.
So this curiosity about technology is now mandatory for any area.
Que o Francisco trouxe.
And about what Francesco mentioned about this hyper-democratization of tools, well, only big companies with lots of resources had access to these technologies. Nowadays, you can actually try all these most modern models,
Pagando nada,
paying basically peanuts, using the internet, testing, playing, using, experimenting. It doesn't matter if you are a student or a big corporation like our banks, the models are the same. And that was not true with past technologies. And of course, we are being transformed as a corporation.
de tecnologia.
We are seen as a technology company, but we also have lawyers, accountants, secretaries,
Equipes de vendas.
sales teams, people that are not really connected to technology development.
Agora está fazendo
And we are now holding the third edition
chamamento coletivo.
of this collective call, let's say,
Funcionários.
of all employees.
Tecnologia não é de desenvolvimento,
They do not pertain to
técnica.
technical teams or development teams or IT teams. No, anyone who wants that, where they can attend this. This is a type of a challenge lab that we have.
Eu gosto e repito várias vezes.
And I like to re-emphasize this because it's an emblematic example. My assistant
50 anos.
is 50 years old. She has been in the company for 50 years, 5 generations working at IBM, and they have known this person. She's super excited with the 2 interns and one of our technicians to build this automation that will conciliate my expenses so as to make sure that my reimbursement matches my credit card statements, because this takes time. This is a time-consuming task, but if she's not interested in doing that,
As coisas não vão acontecer.
well, things won't actually happen. How can we simplify our days? It's not only about sophisticating or rocket science.
Ponto que a gente tem que fazer chamamento.
So we need to have this public call,
Do
this democratized knowledge. But if there is no interest in that, do you agree with me that if she could say, oh, that's not for me, leave it for the young ones?
Não é assim que muitos
It's been working like this for years and years.
Desafio de liderança.
And now when it comes to leadership challenge, well, let's see the opposite, the other end. Let's see, for example, the board and councils of these companies, because they are formed by experienced people. And they are successful people, experienced people, but none of them has ever experienced what we are seeing now. So this banking automation in the 80s, or channel digital transformation for channels in the 90s, or these apps in the 2000s. Well, now we are taking it to a whole new level because the experience of leadership is no longer being experienced. So if leadership is not curious about curious or and open to listen,
E a parte boa
and that's the good thing.
desse interesse
I have seen that there is this growing interest among them.
das empresas se abrir
They are open to become apprentices, to observe the opportunities,
queremos fazer.
what we do not really want to do actually, and so that we can build this guidance. Well, this is something that is happening right now. So this is the time when our leaders, senior leaders, C-level or intermediate levels, they all must be open to listening, because we can do things in a very different manner and in an unprecedented manner.
Uma tecnologia
There will be no technology ruling over all of them or mastering them all. Marketing teams will not make their own videos without tools, and we cannot even tell whether they are real or not, right?
vai
Customer service teams will be more efficient. They will serve at scale, so they need to control everything. So you go from this image model to an SLM models,
você vai ter
little hallucination, little costs,
duas certezas na vida, né? Dia não estaremos mais nessa terra.
and of course, we will no longer be here on Earth forever, I mean, and there will be other novelties that we needed to choose. We need to look for alternatives.
Saiu do mundo do ou
And so we have moved from this or universe and moving into this and universe. So we will both use model X and Y.
vai sair o da semana.
And now there will be a new one coming up next week, and we also needed to build this governance and rules, and of course, but these open platforms will also be added to our pioneer practices in our corporations. If that does not come from leadership, well, I see that there is great openness now. For example, as we saw here at this event, all of us, all CEOs of the greatest banks in Brazil, they have this technological bias, and they're almost talking like experts, because they see that their business have been digitalized, their channels have been digitalized, clients speak through digital channels. So it's no longer about technology. It is belongs to everyone. It does not belong to teams only. It belongs to leaders now, and it's up to everyone to discuss that. Well, in my book and in my lecture, I also deliver this talk at the IBM. I always say that all of us professionals will have to become technology professionals. So this has to do with what you said. And when it comes to capacity building, we know that education plays a big role. And now I would like to mention, because there is a chapter about the future of education. This has been one of my fields of study. And in your opinion, do you think that the academia is prepared to meet these qualification challenges for our workforce? Education, of course, plays the role of educating people for the job market, and now we are educating them for an unknown market. And do you think that educating these professionals so they can be AI literate people, do you think that this is possible?
Dá pra responder como.
Well, let's break this down, because we cannot encompass the whole education system. We needed to separate it by institutions and different places, of course, and locations in the world. Looking at Brazil, our scenario, that's my experience at least. I think that we need to think of this educational process from this important element
Tecnologia,
in technology,
uma transformação das habilidades.
looking at this transformation of skills and talking about this. It's important to mention that they are essential skills, and these are the skills that cannot be outsourced, or we cannot rely on machines to do that. Otherwise, we will become more stupid. So we should not water this down. And there are some accidental skills to be considered, because we actually developed them because nobody could do them instead of us. But now we have these writing skills or reading skills, and these skills are essential, are fundamental, because we're talking about language. And that's the great challenge of all, because oftentimes we say that all AI, is it intelligent or not? And people are still debating about it. But that doesn't really matter to me, because the fact that this AI that we are discussing now is processing language. I'm not talking about this neurological processing, but it does understand what we say, because it produces content accordingly. Wow, this is a dramatic change, because language, the way we organize our our thinking, this is a cognitive skill of ours. This is what differentiates us from other species. So see what a new world we are experiencing. This will actually impact different skills that we will need to develop as well. But our greatest challenge, according to many studies that we have seen, this has to do with the critical thinking, how we use this technology. And there was a very nice article published by Carnemello and Microsoft. Carnemello University is one of the main leaders in researching about technology and people, and they published this at the Computer Humans Interaction Conference. So this is a very good event, and they did many experiences, and they said without this critical thinking, people lose their critical thinking naturally. So this is a feedback cycle. So when it comes to the use of technology, we need to take this into account. When it comes to education, this must be migrated to this area.
Deixar
But we just can't
prestar atenção em coisas.
pay attention.
E eu vou
We cannot stop paying attention to fundamental things. And just to close, at the Catholic University,
A gente passou por processo de
we've been through a transformation of 10, 12 years ago, and we started using teaching
são metodologias
based on projects because they're active methodologies. I was responsible from design a new course from scratch. There's biomedical engineering, that there are no disciplines. They don't have disciplines. Everything is based on competences. They develop projects. They have two projects per semesters. And it's incredible because
como a gente utiliza essa metodologia, a gente
as we use that technology,
cursos da PUC que sofre menos.
this is one of the programs that suffered least with AI.
Lascando lá.
Because the law students, they are suffering because how can they base the argument and friends from IT, but not us, because our role is how can you use AI to solve the problem, to solve your product in a creative way. So that's the challenge. And another example is so that we can understand how challenging the scenario is. There is an interesting study that was conducted in Harvard in computer science that also used project-based methodologies. The group was split into three. They have like AI generative with ChatGPT. Another one could use only with code, and another one could use Google. Could Google as they wish. And they had a project for the semester. Of course, the group that used ChatGPT had the best scores for project, followed by the Code AI, followed by Google. So they were all approved. But after 2 weeks, they had an evaluation for retention of knowledge. So all students who were from the ChatGPT group, they failed. They learned nothing. They made the project, but they didn't need to think. But the Google people, they need to read things, to interpret. And with that,
Desenvolvendo a capacidade
you start developing your cognitive approach, learning. So what I'm saying is that without education needs to adopt these technologies, but wisely, because you cannot buy this speech saying that education needs to change radically. No. At some point, we saw that like project-based learning, that even though it's an active methodology, we need sometimes of a classical class of teacher talking, students listening, bringing information. So it's to find these balancing points, because AI can bring many benefits for education. We need to requalify not only our work power, but that's a topic that we have in the Brazilian plan for AI. It's a requalification of our workforce and our teaching force in Brazil. But when we look at education, we have to find a limit to use technology, to learn from that, but not to avoid this situation that we had in Harvard. So as the job market understands that, we need to understand and need to be faster, because we must be like one step ahead and to bring the answers for this journey. Really nice. Okay, so we are coming towards the end of our panel. And along with your final consideration, I would like to hear in a very objective way from each of you, because we ran out of time, some kind of advice if you haven't thought about your agentic AI strategy. So we're going to start with you, Francesco.
Consiglio è
Advice:
non improvvisa.
don't improvise,
È una cosa che sta chegando per
because it's something that it's coming, it's here to stay. It's much better to have like
reportage nostro.
an go slower to go fast.
Montare un frame
So if you have a framework that you're going to follow the growth
provato di
that it's been proved,
IRSO per
it's better than like,
c'è un monte di impatto
because we know that there is a lot of impact.
da fera e sta precisa ricominciare.
So you will need to start from scratch with new data, with data that is not so good.
Todas as vezes precisare
So you need to feed all over again. So let's not use this approach, because it's not going to take us anywhere.
E você, Braga?
Braga, how about you?
Tomar emprestado uma.
Well, I'm going to borrow this quote from
Assim, a responsabilidade.
AI does not know ChatGPT, so the need to train AI and to use it comes from those that train and from those that govern.
Eu acho que aqui
So I think that everything is simple, everything seems to be magical, and it really is a disruption. But when you talk about AI for business, as the forum that we are now, AI for business requires this kind of special care. So, okay, why are you going to use it? For how long? And the second point is,
abertas as tecnologias.
the more open the technology are,
A prova de
will prevent companies to be like future-proof,
que hoje é fantástico.
because AI here is just amazing, but may not be the most efficient tomorrow, maybe not the most innovative,
Uma plataforma
because
pode ser simples agora, pode
it can be simple now. What is simple now can be a problem later on. So open platforms and data governance are the base for what we mentioned here,
guarda-reios de segurança
for guardrails and to ensure risk mitigation and to be open to the vanguard, because there is still a lot to come.
Você, Rafa?
Rafael, what about you?
Desenhe uma boa estratégia
Well, design good strategy
em todas as áreas.
with all areas that you work with. Declare your ambition to the board.
E lembre-se,
Make people use it, and remember, but this is not a crazy race, because it's here. So if you have proper planning,
senso de
and if you have this sense of
consciência da empresa, de onde ela
self-awareness of where the company is and where it wants to be, if you have that in paper and if you adopt that wisely, you're not going to compete against anything. We are going to adopt everything that is here. Diogo?
Pegando que o Braga colocou.
I'm going to build in what Braga said about future-proof and creativity. About 2 weeks ago, I wrote a text at Wall that it was, why do we need to imagine weird futures with AI?
Porque assim, é tão imprevisível.
Because this is so unpredictable, and it can be so many things, and it can unfold in so many ways, that I think this, thinking about speculative AI and design and thinking about ways that are possible or not, can prepare us for this future that we have no idea how it is. And it's really hard to predict. So at this moment, I think this is the best moment so that we can imagine, think, speculate about the future, and think about what kind of AI we want, that it's ethical, responsible,
Inovação.
if we have innovation that bring productivity, but at the same time with respecting human rights. So this is it.
Excelente. Que a
Excellent. What a class. Thank you very much. So good night, everyone.